What's going on, YouTube? Today is 8/22/2024. Let's talk bank failures. Let's get down to the truth. I've sat on this for a little bit. I took myself to school, learning more about the 2008 lending crisis. And I realized, while I knew a lot, I didn't know much. So, let's talk about the narrative of bank failures. Before we do that, if you could hit the like, hit the subscribe, drop a comment, also follow me on Rumble. And if you are feeling generous and are in a position to buy precious metals, click that Money Metals link down below. It's been a hard go. They've actually removed a couple of credits from me. One, I understand why. The others, I do not. So that would be helpful. And again, hit that Rumble button. Follow me over there. That is also a struggle. This channel has not been doing extremely well. There's reasons for that, and that's okay. I tell the truth. Now, this may roll into more than one part because I will inevitably forget to say something that I want to say that I find important, because I do that. So let's go back to 2008. It started before that, but let's go back to what happened in 2008. The bank failures, right? And there's a narrative that banks are going to fail. Well, what does that mean? And see, nobody ever really gets into this. Trader Bubba actually got into that on his recent video, and it's funny because this was already planned. So if you get a chance, check him out. I'll link his channel below. Very smart guy. And that's this. Are bank failures going to happen? Yes. Have they happened? Yes. Are they going to happen again? Sure. But you go back to 08, right? And what happened was, for those of you who don't know, commercial banks, your bank down the street that you have a checking account with, wrote loans. The underwriters approved loans for people with no income. And if you take emotion out of what I'm going to say later in this video, you might say, damn, he's not wrong. And if you don't say that, then you need to remove your emotion. So it's the blame game, right? Banks did what they do. Banks said, okay, we're going to loan money. Interest rates are low from the Fed. We're going to loan money, and we're going to make money on interest. And then the big investment banks on Wall Street came in and said, hey, we want to buy those loans. And underwriters who ultimately approved the loans approved a lot of subprime loans, which means there was no income verification. Whatever you put on the application was legit as far as they cared, because they were making money. And investment banks came in and bought those loans. And they bundled them up and sold them off to investors. Now, did they know that it's estimated 60%-ish of those loans? Did they know that those were subprime? They had to have known. They probably were so caught up in making profits, and it worked for quite some time. They probably didn't pay too much attention because the money was coming in, right? People believed that real estate would never drop in price, which is foolish. Every asset class goes up and down. Real estate's no exception. And ultimately, the banks failed. You have Lehman Brothers, you have Bear Stearns, and the government told Lehman Brothers, no, we're not going to bail you out. And once they realized what happened, or what was going to happen to the financial system, they said, oh, we have to bail out these other banks because money markets will dry up, ATMs will go empty, and they're not wrong. That's exactly what happened. So here's the hard part of the video. If you or a loved one or a friend or one of those people that lost their house during that period, I'm sorry, it sucks. It does. It's not funny. It's lives, and it's horrible. Now, here's the part where emotion needs to be removed. Everybody wants to blame the banks. Everybody wants to blame Wall Street, and they should. But you know what? One thing I never hear anybody talk about, and I've never heard this. I'm not saying it hasn't been said, but I've never, ever, ever, ever heard this. What about all those people that went out and lied about their income and lied about their assets they had and financed a house that they A, couldn't afford, and B, was more than they needed? See, the answer is the same. The banks, the investment banks, and those homeowners that couldn't afford those houses. And yes, people lose jobs, things happen, but I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the majority of people who simply didn't have an income, or one that would even begin to justify them taking out these loans. That's what I'm talking about. Those people are all the same. It's greed. You know, wanting a house you know you can't afford. It's greed. Writing a loan that you know or should know won't be paid back, and not caring because you're getting your bonuses. It's greed. It's all greed. But nobody ever talks about the people that went out and took out these loans full well knowing, and you can't tell me they didn't know, with no income, that they weren't going to be able to pay it back. I don't subscribe to that. That's not reality. And I don't hear people talking about that. Everybody's to blame that participated. Sorry, it's the truth. And what Trader Bubba talked about is when banks fail, and this is me saying this, this is never the narrative, presented to people, and the people who say, oh, your bank's going to fail, it's over. What they either don't understand or do understand and don't share, and I think it's a mix of both, is that if your bank fails and you have under the FDIC insured amount in your account, you will, as the depositor, be made whole. If the FDIC can't afford it because all the banks fail at once, which, again, I live in reality, that's not going to happen. But let's say theoretically it does. The Fed's going to come in, they're going to print the money, and they're going to give it to the FDIC to make the depositors whole. That's just the way it works. The people who lose when banks fail are people like me. And by people like me, I mean shareholders in those banks. I do have shares in some banks. I have shares in financial institutions. And if those fail, I'm out. I'm done. I mean, I'm not burnt because I'm spread pretty diversified, and I have a fat stack of metals to keep me safe at all times. But in that instance, my stock goes to zero. So if a bank fails, the only people who really, really have much to lose are the shareholders. And nobody ever talks about that. Just like nobody ever talks about, the people who took out loans they knew they couldn't afford to pay back and being part of the problem. Are the banks part of the problem? Absolutely. Is Wall Street part of the problem? Absolutely. Are the people who took out the loans they knew they couldn't afford to pay part of the problem? Absolutely. And that's the part that people just don't talk about. And if somebody took out that loan and they didn't understand that they had an adjustable rate mortgage or a variable rate mortgage, and that interest rate could adjust after a certain amount of time, they should have known better. We are all responsible for our choices, is what I'm saying. So, when people talk about bank failures, let's keep in mind what that really means, what we have to lose, what we have insured, and what we're likely to lose and not lose. And as a depositor, you're simply not going to lose. Not financial advice. None of this is financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research, form your own opinions. Use that money metal link down below. Follow me on Rumble. Show some love on this channel, and whatever you do, keep stacking.